Hello viewers, welcome once again to the eMath learning platform by Peter Ekaja. I am this time going to take you through the use of the graphical method to solve quadratic equations. And this is basically for the O-level mathematics students. Remember, my YouTube channel is still eMath learning platform for any kind of updates that you would wish to have whenever I post new content. Make sure you always go there and subscribe. Subscription is actually free of charge. And in case of any clarifications or questions, feel free to contact me through these contact details, either via email or WhatsApp. Now, let's look at the use of the graphical method for solving quadratic equations. What do we have to know? Now, to solve a quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0 by the graphical method, we simply draw a graph of y equals to ax squared plus bx plus c. What are we trying to say here? Look at the quadratic equation we have. So you simply first draw a graph of y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And so it means, by comparison, actually your y replaces 0 in this case. And when y becomes equals to 0, then you know that is automatically the x-axis. So later on, after you drawing your graph, you simply look at the points of intersection between your curve and the x-axis, and you only consider the x values, and the x values will give you the solution to your quadratic equation. Note, if the coefficient of x squared is positive, the curve will take a U shape, and if it is negative, the curve will take an N shape. Let's look at some simple examples on that. Number 1, solve the equation x squared minus x minus 2 equals to 0 for values of x in the range -2 less or equal to x less or equal to 3. Now let's look at the solution for this specific question. So we are going to say let y equals to x squared minus x minus 2. As we said earlier, remember our quadratic equation was x squared minus x minus 2 equals to 0. So we are only considering the quadratic expression first. Then on this, you simply go and draw a simple table which contains both values of x and y. And how does this table come about? You simply write a row containing values of x based on the range you were given. And remember, they gave us from -2 to +3. So we now say -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Those are our values of x. Then to come up with the first term of our quadratic expression, it is x squared. You simply square each of these values of x. So -2 squared gives you 4, -1 squared gives you 1, and so on until you finish this row. When you go to -x, it is also obtained just from here. Remember to always move together with the sign. We had -x, and that is why we have -x here. So -x means -1 multiplied by x. There is a silent 1 here. So with a negative, it becomes -1 multiplied by x. So it means you're going to multiply -1 by each of the values of x. So in this case, we shall say -1 times -2, you get +2. -1 times -1, you get +1, and so on and so forth. Then for the constant value, which is -2, you simply write it and maintain it all through this complete row, like you see it here. If it was a positive, you would also maintain a positive. Then how do you get the final value of y? Remember, y is a combination of all the three terms. And so what you do, you simply add 4 plus 2 plus -2. You will get 4. Add 1 plus 1 plus -2, you will get 0. So that is how we obtain values of y. You can try it out for these remaining columns and see whether you sincerely get these values. Now, after this table is complete, we simply go and plot the values of x against the values of y. So in this case, we have negative 2 against 4. That is one of your points. In this case, we have negative 1 against 0, another point. 0 against negative 2, and so on and so forth. So let's look at a sample of our graph. Make sure you draw the accurate one, because mine in this case is going to be an approximate one. So this is how my graph comes if I'm to plot all my points of x and y correctly. If you come up with your points, so what do you need to have in this case? Number one, you should have either a pencil or a pen. But remember, when you have a pen, you can't rub, and so it needs a lot of carefulness. So using a pencil would be much better and easier for that person who thinks he could easily make a mistake and adjust where necessary. Now, what is the first thing that you have to do when you come to graph work? Label the axis. So in this case, I've labeled x and I've labeled y, and these are my two axes. Then number two, you plot your points. Then after plotting them, you simply join them with a free hand and make sure you come up with a smooth curve, as you can see in this case. Now, we said if the coefficient of x squared is positive, we shall have a U-shaped curve, and indeed we can easily see it from this point here. Now, how can we solve the quadratic equation given in the question? You simply look at the points of intersection between the x-axis and the curve. Now, in this case, we realize the curve has cut the x-axis when x is equal to -1, and again it has cut the same axis when x is equal to +2. It means our solution is going to be -1 and +2, and those are going to be your values of x. So let's look at that conclusion. So we can now conclude that from the graph above, we observe that the curve cuts the x-axis at -1 and 2. So x is equal to -1 and x is equal to 2. Let's look at number 2, as we can see it here. So they're saying solve the quadratic equation for x squared minus 12x plus 9 equals to 0 for the values of x in the range this. What do we do? Still here, we have values of x ranging from -1 to 4. It means we shall have -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, up to 4. So that is how your row of x should be, especially in the table. So we have -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, up to 4. Then the next term is going to be for x squared. For x squared is going to now have this complete row. And how do you get these values? You simply get the value of x first, square it. Then after squaring it, you multiply by 4. Get another value, which is 0, square it also. After squaring, multiply it by 4. So should you do that, you will surely get all these values correctly. Then in this case, we have -12x. How have we got it? It is just simply here. We have considered a negative because it is the sign we have here. So it means you're going to get each value of x multiplied by -12. So it's going to be -12 times, for example, -1, you get +12. -12 times 0, you get 0. So you can continue with the rest and complete the table. Then for the constant term, which is 9, we simply maintain it all through the row. And that is why we have 9, 9, 9 all through. Then to get the value of y, we said y is equals to this minus this plus 9. But for you, you simply add these values. Add 4 plus 12 plus 9. Add 0 plus 0 plus 9. And so on and so forth. And you'll find all your values of y coming out correctly. After that, you simply go and draw your graph. So the graph is again U-shaped because the coefficient of x squared, as we can see here, is positive. Remember to always label the axis first, and this graph should be drawn using a free hand. Now, there is something very unique about this graph. You realize this time round the curve has not cut the x-axis at 2 points, but it has just touched the x-axis at only 1 point. What do we mean in this case, and what do we conclude? Now, for any quadratic equation, we always expect 2 values. But in this case, since it has only touched the x-axis at 1 point, it means the value of x, which is in this case 1.5, will be appearing twice. So it means x1 is 1.5 and x2 is also 1.5. But how do you summarize that? You simply say x is equals to 1.5 in brackets repeated. And that will be your direct and final answer. So we can look at that conclusion. So we are saying we now observe that the curve does not cut the x-axis at 2 points, but only touches it at 1 point. That is to say x at x equals to 1.5. So we conclude that x is equals to 1.5, but repeated. Let's look at the next question. Number 3. Number 3 is quite interesting. It has many questions attached to it. Now it says draw a graph of y equals to 2 plus 2x minus x squared in this range. Use your graph to solve this quadratic equation. Then finally state the maximum value of y. Now to draw the first one, we have already gone through it in the first procedures. I will only come in to explain more when we come to part B and part C. What do we do? Solution. So for the first graph, we're going to follow the same procedures. Draw our table basing on the range given to us, -2 to +4. That is why you see all this. Come to 2. 2 is a constant, so you maintain it all through. 2x means you get each value of x multiplied by 2. You will get all these values. -x squared. This is where trouble comes, especially when it comes to you, the learners. What do you do in this case? First, obtain the value of x, square it, and multiply by -1. I repeat, obtain the value of x, substitute here, square, and multiply by -1. So for example here, we get -2 squared, you get +4. Then you multiply it by -1 to get -1. Should you include the negative under the square, then you automatically get wrong values. Take note of that. Then to get the y values, simply add these values, add these 3 values, and add these 3 values as you continue until you complete the table. You will surely come up with the values of y as you see them here. From that point, we can now go and draw our graph first. Now, the first graph is supposed to be this curve. And why is it n-shaped? It is n-shaped because the coefficient of x squared is negative. Now, this line should not worry you. We are going to see how this line came about just in the next presentation. Now, let's look at this. Now, to come up with a line, we shall first ask ourselves, our original expression or graph was y equals to 2 plus 2x minus x squared. So they told you to solve this equation that you see here in part B. So we're now doing part B. What do? You subtract this from the original quadratic expression, which was y equals to 2 plus 2x minus x squared. Should you subtract, you realize negative x squared minus negative x squared will be 0. 2x minus x will be x, and 2 minus 6 will be -4. After getting this, it shows you that it is a straight line. Why? Because it is in the form y equals mx plus c. What do you do for it? Just pick a few points. For example, we have picked 3 points here. For x, any values of x of your choice can be considered here. Do not only take these values that you see here. You can take any other values of x and you find the values of y. But of course, take values that you can easily manage to plot on a graph. So we have got values of y by simply substituting values of x here. For example, -2 here minus 4 gives us -6. -1 minus 4 gives us -5, and 0 minus 4 gives us -4. So you now go and plot again -2, -6, -1, -5, 0, -4. If you join those 3 points, they will give you a straight line as we saw here. They will give you the straight line here. Now, after getting the straight line on a graph, you're going to realize it has 2 points of intersection with the curve. So you simply look at this point of intersection, go and read the corresponding value of x. Here I can see 3. Look at this value here. Go up and read the value of x. Here I can see it corresponds to -2. And so it means the solution to part B will be x equals to -2 and x equals to +3. And that is going to be your answer. So we are saying from the graph, the solution to this quadratic equation is x equals -2 and x equals to 3. Now, they also ask for the maximum value of y. How do we get the maximum value? The maximum value is simply got by going back to your graph. Look at the maximum peak. Now here you can see this is a really turning point. This is the maximum peak. I simply go and read the value of y corresponding to that peak. And in this case, I can easily see it as 3. And that value becomes the maximum value. And that is why I concluded, as we have seen in this case, that the maximum value of y equals to this is actually 3. In case it was a U-shaped curve, they can easily ask you for the minimum value. Use the same idea. Now, after all this, let's now look at this exercise to check out whether you really understood something in our tutorial. Any questions are always welcome, and I'm always there for free consultations where necessary. So that is our number 1 and number 2. Then number 3 and number 4 are here. Then finally, what else can I do apart from thanking you very much? God bless you. Remember to visit my YouTube channel, eMath Learning Platform, and subscribe to always receive continuous updates whenever I upload new content. And please remember to share with a friend and remind a friend to share with a friend. Have the best of your day.